Dear Ukrainians, briefly about this day, which began with a strike on our country, yet another Russian strike, a vile one, like everything else they do. The energy sector was their main target. But tragically, there have also been casualties. As Christmas Eve began, Ukraine was hit by one of the biggest and most devastating strikes on its energy grid, plunging communities into darkness just as winter cold and holiday nights closed in. The overnight barrage turned large parts of Ukraine into blacked-out war zones, where homes, streets and entire cities suddenly lost power and people were left facing explosions in near-total darkness. At least 3 people were killed and more than 10 others were injured in Russia's massive night attack on December 23rd. As missiles and drones struck homes, streets, and key facilities across multiple regions. This latest barrage on Christmas Eve once again targeted Ukraine's energy infrastructure in the middle of winter, deliberately trying to cut off electricity and heating when civilians need them most. Rivne, Ternopil and Khmelnytskyi were left almost completely without power after the strikes, as grids collapsed and local authorities warned residents to brace for prolonged outages. Ukraine's energy ministry said emergency power outages had to be imposed in multiple regions, using rolling cuts and strict limits to stabilize a system badly damaged by the attacks. Ukraine's energy ministry in a statement said, as soon as the security situation allows, rescue teams and energy specialists will begin addressing the consequences of the attack to restore electricity supply in the regions as quickly as possible. As a result of the attack, Ukraine's nuclear power plants have been forced to reduce their generation capacity. The capacity of power plants will be gradually increased to nominal values as soon as energy companies restore the networks damaged by the enemy. The Energy Ministry described this strike as the 9th large-scale attack on Ukraine's power system in 2025, highlighting how repeated blows have steadily worn down generation and transmission capacity. Volodymyr Zelensky said Russia had launched more than 650 drones and around 3 dozen missiles at Ukraine, portraying the attack as a massive, coordinated attempt to terrorize civilians and cripple infrastructure.
Dear Ukrainians, briefly about this day, which began with a strike on our country, yet another Russian strike, vile like everything else they do. The energy sector was their main target. But tragically, there have also been casualties. Throughout the day, repair crews have been working at energy facilities, putting in maximum effort to ensure that Ukrainians have electricity for Christmas. Of course, the Russians are trying to ruin this holiday, this sacred day, as well. No surprise there. That is the way their country is, that is the kind of neighbor they are. It is vital that the world sees this and understands that it cannot be left unaddressed. Ukraine needs support every day, on holidays and on ordinary days alike. It needs missiles for air defense, funding for weapons production. It needs assistance to maintain our resilience. And that is exactly what we are ensuring. Today, I spoke with Ursula von der Leyen. Thank you for your support at this time and throughout all the years of this war. We discussed once more the details of the €90 billion package for Ukraine over the next 2 years, a historic decision for our resilience. We are making sure Ukraine gets what it needs. Today, our negotiating team presented a detailed report. Rustem Umerov and Andriy Natov returned after meetings in the United States with envoys of President Trump. They reported on the working drafts of agreements that already exist, and on the points of the agreements we have managed to strengthen. We remain in constant contact with the United States and look forward to further collaboration. We sense that America wants to reach a final agreement, and from our side, there is full cooperation. Ukraine has never been, and will never be, an obstacle to peace. We are working actively and doing everything necessary to ensure that the documents come to fruition and that they are realistic. The key is that Russia must not sabotage this diplomacy and must take ending the war 100% seriously. If it does not, then additional pressure on Russia must follow. The world has all the instruments needed to make that pressure effective and ensure that peace is achieved. I thank everyone who is helping. I also spoke with President Stubb of Finland. Alex, as always, is providing maximum support, and we are coordinating with all our partners. Today, there were also detailed military briefings. I thank all our warriors and each unit for active defense. There was also a report today by Ukraine's Prime Minister, Yulia Sviridenko, on the energy situation, the restoration of our generation and networks, and the transformation of energy companies. A great deal is being done. The initial audit results are already available, and updates to supervisory boards and management continue. All of this is right. We also went over the first outcomes of our winter support program. Nearly 18 million people have applied for winter support. Tomorrow, we may reach that full number. It is important that applications are submitted specifically by Christmas, as that is the final day for submitting applications for this year's winter support. And the funds will be available until June, meaning that all of these nearly 18 million Ukrainians will be able to benefit from the program. And we see that such forms of support, direct assistance, are truly effective, and not just in our country. America, Europe, and other parts of the world are developing their own direct support programs in one form or another. We will provide new ones next year. I thank everyone who cares for Ukrainians, our state, our defense, and Ukraine's national interests. I thank all those who defend Ukraine as they would themselves. Glory to Ukraine!
Slava Ukraini!
Later, Ukraine's Air Force reported that 635 drones and 38 missiles were launched in the strike, giving a precise sense of the scale and intensity of the assault across the country. Air defenses intercepted 587 drones and 34 missiles, but 39 drones still broke through and hit 21 targets across Ukraine, causing fires, explosions, and new damage to vital facilities. Ukraine's largest private energy company said this was the seventh attack on its infrastructure since October, showing how its plants have become repeated targets over the past few months. Naftogaz CEO Serhiy Koretsky said the strikes damaged Ukhnafta production sites and forced work to be suspended, disrupting fuel output and adding pressure on the wider energy sector. Koretsky added that urgent repairs were already underway at the Ukhnafta facilities, with crews racing against time to restore operations and prevent longer-term losses. Zaporizhstal, one of Ukraine's biggest steelmakers, was completely cut off from power, halting production and underscoring how industrial giants are also vulnerable to energy strikes. In Zhytomyr Oblast, a 4-year-old child was killed and 5 people were injured in the attack, a stark reminder that the most vulnerable are often the first to suffer in these barrages. In Kyiv Oblast, 1 person was killed and 3 others were injured in the Russian strikes, as debris and shockwaves damaged homes and streets on the outskirts of the capital. In Khmelnytskyi Oblast, 1 person was killed during the latest attack, the regional governor said, reporting casualties even in areas far from the front line. In Rivne Oblast, around 300,000 consumers lost power after a major energy facility was damaged, leaving hundreds of thousands of people suddenly without light, heating or communications. Lviv Oblast Governor Maxim Kozytsky said Russia had hit a critical energy infrastructure facility, warning residents to expect outages and urging them to conserve electricity. Odessa reported damage to energy, port, transport, industrial and residential infrastructure, as strikes disrupted trade routes, hit factories and left many homes scarred or without power. Critical and civilian infrastructure was also damaged in Chernihiv and Sumy oblasts, where utilities, public buildings, and residential areas all suffered from the latest wave of attacks. Poland scrambled fighter jets and placed its air defense and radar systems on high alert after the attack, reacting swiftly as Russian missiles and drones flew towards western Ukraine near its border. Poland said these measures were preventive but necessary, stressing that heightened readiness was essential while Russia targeted western Ukraine close to NATO airspace.